My wedding was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, but everything changed during the suit fitting, when a stranger's touch suddenly made my heart beat differently. At the time, I didn't know that this moment would turn my life upside down, not because of betrayal, but because of the truth that I had been hiding even from myself for years. I was a month away from my wedding when a stranger's hands made me question everything. The fitting was supposed to be routine. My fiancée Emma had arranged it. Upscale tailor, 5-star reviews, a 6-week wait list. Only the best for my future husband, she'd said. I nodded, smiled, played the part. That's what I'd been doing a lot lately, playing the part. I arrived late. The tailor, Noah, was already waiting. Calm nod, firm handshake, efficient, professional. At first, it started simply, arms out, chest measured, notes scribbled, but something shifted. When his hands adjusted the fabric near my ribs, I felt a jolt, a sharp, confusing pull in the center of my chest. I blamed nerves, stress, anything but the man whose touch was too focused, too precise, too present. He crouched to measure my legs. "Hold still," he said. His voice had dropped, softer, lower. "You're tense," he added. "Yeah, just wedding stuff." He looked up. "You sure that's all it is?" The air shifted. Something silent but loud passed between us. I couldn't hold his gaze. My chest rose faster. My fingers curled tight. I said nothing, and neither did he. The rest of the fitting passed quickly, but everything felt different. The silence wasn't empty. It was full of questions I hadn't let myself ask. Driving home, I couldn't stop thinking about him, about his hands, about the way my body had responded to a stranger more than it ever had to Emma. It wasn't lust. Not exactly. It was disruption. A quiet collision with something I'd buried too long. My plans, my image, the life I thought I wanted. The next morning, I told myself it was nothing. Misread signals. A fluke. I needed to focus on my wedding, on Emma, on the life we were building. Then a text came. Second fitting ready. Friday at 5. Noah. And instead of dreading it, I watched the days crawl by, counting the hours. And that terrified me more than anything. I showed up early for the second fitting, told myself it was just to be polite. Not because I couldn't stop thinking about what might happen if our hands touched again. Not because I dreamed about it. Not because I'd woken up in a cold sweat 2 nights ago, confused and aching for reasons I couldn't explain. Noah didn't greet me the same way this time. He simply looked up, nodded once, and gestured to the spot in front of the mirror. There was no small talk, no jokes about the wedding, just quiet professionalism that only made everything louder in my head. When he moved behind me to adjust the shoulders, his hands brushed the sides of my neck. I flinched, not from discomfort, but because it felt like someone striking a match inside my chest. "I won't bite," he said, finally breaking the silence. "I didn't think you would," I replied, though my voice said otherwise. "You sure?" He caught my eye in the mirror, and just like that, the room tightened again. Not physically, but emotionally, like it couldn't contain what was building between us. "I'm engaged," I said. It sounded like a defense, but I meant it as a confession. He didn't look away. "And she's a good person." "That's not what I asked." "I know." Noah stepped back, gave me a moment, but the pause didn't help. It only let the thoughts I'd been avoiding come rushing in. How long had I been ignoring this part of myself? Why had I never questioned what I was missing until now? When did comfort become confusion? He returned to his notes, then moved in to measure my arms. "People lie to themselves all the time," he said softly. "It doesn't make them bad, just scared." "Are you always this direct with your clients?" "Number, but most don't look like they're about to explode." I swallowed hard. "This is insane. I'm getting married in 29 days. "Then why are you here looking at me like that?" "I don't know how I'm looking at you." "You do." I did. That was the worst part. I knew exactly what he meant. My eyes kept searching for reasons to stay in the room. My body leaned into his without meaning to. My chest hurt from trying to hold everything in. "I've never felt like this before," I admitted. "With a man?" he asked. "With anyone." The truth stunned me as it left my mouth, but I didn't take it back. I couldn't. Noah's tone didn't change. He didn't gloat or press. He simply folded his measuring tape and said, "Then maybe you should figure out why. I'm supposed to be choosing flowers tonight." "Are you?" I blinked. "What? Supposed to? That's a dangerous word, isn't it?" I didn't have an answer, just silence. And silence in that room was more revealing than any words. When he finally stepped closer to mark the hem of my pants, I tensed again. Not because of where his hands were, but because of what they meant. This wasn't just fabric. This wasn't about tailoring. This was about someone seeing straight through me and refusing to pretend otherwise. "I should go," I said again, just like I had last time. But again, I didn't move. Noah looked up. "You keep saying that, but you never do." "I'm scared." "Good, means it matters." My voice cracked. "What if I ruin everything?" "You already are, just not the way you think." I stepped back then, a full, trembling step. Not because I was angry, but because I was terrified of how much I wanted to stay. I didn't trust myself. Not with him. Not with what I was discovering. Not with what it might cost. I left the studio without looking back, but as I walked down the street, hands shaking, lungs tight, one thought chased me harder than any guilt. He was right, and that truth scared me more than anything else ever had. I didn't sleep the night after the second fitting. I lay in bed next to Emma, her breath soft beside me, and stared at the ceiling like it might give me answers. I'd never felt further from the person I was supposed to be. She stirred sometime around 3, reached for my hand. I let her find it. I didn't squeeze back. The next day, I canceled our flower appointment. "I've got a client emergency," I told her. A lie, small but sharp. I used to pride myself on being honest. Used to. Instead, I sat in my car for nearly an hour outside the studio, engine running, trying to decide whether to go inside or drive away and forget everything that was unraveling. I didn't go in, but I didn't leave either. That night, I told myself I'd made a choice, that walking away meant something, that silence was clarity. It wasn't. By the end of the week, I was short-tempered, distracted, rehearsing conversations in my head that I never actually started. I knew I couldn't keep pretending. Something had to give. It did. Emma found me on the balcony, eyes red, voice tight. "What's going on with you?" I opened my mouth, closed it, tried again. "I don't know how to say this without hurting you." Her face crumpled before I'd even said anything else. "Are you cheating on me?" I didn't." I stopped. But something happened. She waited, arms crossed, guard up. "I went to a fitting," I began, "and the tailor, God, this sounds ridiculous." "Just say it." I felt something, and not just physically. Something woke up, something I didn't know was there. Or maybe I always knew, but... "You're leaving me for a tailor?" I'm not leaving you for anyone. I'm trying to be honest before I destroy us completely." Emma stared at me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. Maybe I always had been. "Are you saying you're gay?" "I don't know," I admitted. "I know that I felt more alive in 10 minutes with him than I have in years." "That's disgusting." I took it. I didn't argue. She had a right to be furious. "You're throwing away everything," she said. I'm finally questioning if what we built was real for me. I've been going through the motions for so long, I forgot what it's like to actually feel something. Emma didn't cry. She didn't beg. She didn't even ask me to stay. She just turned and walked away. And it was the most merciful thing she could have done. The next few days were a blur of silence. Phone calls from her parents. Angry messages from mutual friends. My mother's confused voice asking if this was a phase, if I'd been pressured, if I'd seen a therapist. I had no answers for them. I didn't know if I was gay, bisexual, confused, broken. All I knew was that I couldn't marry someone while hiding a part of myself that had finally demanded to be seen. I sat in my apartment, surrounded by unopened wedding gifts, and realized I wasn't grieving the relationship. I was grieving the version of me who believed that following the plan would lead to happiness. On the third day, I texted Noah. "I ended it. Not for you. For me." He responded within seconds. "Come by tomorrow. No fittings, just coffee." And for the first time in weeks, I breathed without guilt. Noah opened the door before I knocked. He didn't say anything at first, just stepped aside and let me in. No measuring tape, no pretense, just coffee, like he promised. I sat down on a small bench near the back of the shop, still half expecting him to pull out fabric swatches and start talking about seams. But he didn't. He handed me a mug, then sat across from me without breaking eye contact. "You look different," he said. "I feel undone." He nodded. "That's not a bad place to start." The silence between us was calmer now, less like a storm, more like the quiet after one. My body still tensed, but it wasn't from fear anymore. It was anticipation, vulnerability, relief. "I broke her heart," I said. "I know. She didn't deserve that. No one does. She called me selfish, said I was confused, that I was destroying something good just to chase something uncertain. She's not wrong about the uncertainty," he said gently, "but maybe you were already lost long before you met me." I looked away. Maybe. For a moment, I just stared at my hands. They didn't look like they belonged to someone brave. They looked like someone who had dropped everything and wasn't sure how to hold anything again. "I'm not here to start something with you," I said. "Not yet." Noah didn't flinch. "Good. That means you're not running." "I don't know what I am." "You're rebuilding, piece by piece." I exhaled, slow and uneven. "It feels like starting from scratch." "It is. But I'm almost 30. Everyone else has already figured themselves out. Everyone else is pretending better than you did." That made me smile. First time in days. We talked for hours that day, about everything but us, about childhood, music, failure, about what it meant to grow up with expectations so deeply rooted you didn't even question if they were yours. He didn't push, didn't flirt, didn't try to make it more than it was. He just stayed. And for the first time since walking away from the life I thought I wanted, I didn't feel like I was drowning. The days that followed weren't perfect. Emma's family sent angry emails. My parents tiptoed around the subject. A few friends stopped returning my calls. Loneliness came in waves, but Noah kept showing up. In small ways. A text, a coffee, a conversation that didn't require answers. He never asked what I was, never pushed for labels. He only asked how I felt, how I was sleeping, whether I was taking care of myself. One afternoon, sitting on a park bench, he said, "You don't owe anyone a definition." "I don't." "Number, you owe yourself honesty. Everything else can wait." I stared at the ground, at the leaves collecting near my feet. And if the honesty is that I don't know what I want yet, then we sit in the not knowing, together. That word, together, hit harder than it should have. Not because it meant romance, but because it meant I wasn't alone. Weeks passed. I started therapy, moved out of the apartment Emma and I had shared. Let the silence stretch long enough to hear my own voice again. And when I saw Noah again, really saw him, something shifted. Not a rush, not a spark, just recognition. I was starting to understand what it meant to choose someone because you could, not because you should, and I realized I didn't want to be anywhere else. 1 year later, I stood in the same studio, in front of the same mirror, wearing a new suit. Not for a wedding to Emma. That day never came. This suit wasn't about obligation. It wasn't about living up to expectations or checking off boxes. It was about a dinner with my parents. A dinner where I'd finally introduced them to the man who helped me become someone worth introducing. Noah stood behind me, adjusting the shoulders like he always did. Quiet, focused, present. But this time, something was different. "You're not holding your breath," he said. "I'm not afraid anymore." "Of them? Of me?" He smiled. Not the kind of smile that asks for attention, but the kind that says, "I see you." He stepped around to face me and straightened my tie. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I stared at it, not shocked, just still, like my body needed time to catch up to what my heart already knew. "Noah, let me finish," he said gently. "A year ago, you walked into my life wearing the wrong suit for the wrong future. I didn't know what would happen. I didn't know if you'd ever come back. I almost didn't. I know, but you did. And every time you did, it felt like a miracle I hadn't earned. He opened the box. Inside was a simple silver ring. No diamonds, no flourishes, just something real. I don't care if you say yes today, or next year, or never, but I want you to know that I'm here. Not because you need saving, not because you owe me anything, but because I choose you. Every version of you, even the ones still figuring things out. I didn't need time to think. I reached for the ring. Yes, I said. He didn't cry. Neither did I. We just stood there. Two people who had already fallen, now finally landing. Later that night, sitting across from my parents, I told them everything. About the wedding I didn't have, about the life I let go, about the truth I'd avoided for most of my adult life. There were tears, confusion, a long silence. But when my father finally spoke, all he said was, "Are you happy?" I looked at Noah. "Yes," I said. "For the first time, I really am." He reached for my hand under the table and squeezed once. We didn't talk about labels. We didn't dive into explanations. It wasn't easy, but it was honest, and that made it enough. The day we got married was small. No big venue, no guest list from two families who'd barely recovered. Just a few friends, a justice of the peace, and a suit that fit perfectly. Not because it was tailored to my body, but because it reflected a life I had finally chosen. Noah never said I told you so. He didn't have to. The life we were building said it for him. And now every morning, when I wake up next to the man who waited while I dismantled everything false, I remember what it felt like to stand frozen in that first fitting, scared, confused, afraid of wanting what I wasn't supposed to want. But now I know. Nothing true ever starts with supposed to. It starts with ready, and I was finally ready. Marrying Noah didn't erase everything that came before. There were still reminders. Wedding invitations I never sent, relationships I never repaired, photos I couldn't bring myself to delete. Some days I'd open a drawer and find a gift meant for a life I never lived, and my chest would tighten. But the regret didn't last long anymore, because what I chose wasn't perfect. It was true, and every morning I woke up next to that truth. Noah and I didn't become some flawless couple overnight. We argued about groceries, about silence, about how much space we each needed. He hated how I shut down when stressed. I hated how he always had to fix things, even when I just needed to vent. But the difference was, we never had to pretend. He didn't expect me to perform. I didn't expect him to save me. We met in the middle. On the bad days, that meant just breathing in the same room until the storm passed. On the good ones, it meant making each other laugh over nothing. There was a strange peace in the messiness. One night, nearly a year after the wedding, I ran into someone I hadn't seen since before I called everything off. A mutual friend of Emma's. He was polite but distant, like he wasn't sure if I deserved forgiveness. "You look different," he said. "I am," I replied. He nodded slowly. "Was it worth it? All the pain you caused?" That question stuck with me for days. I didn't answer him then, but I knew what I should have said. Yes. Not because the pain didn't matter, but because pretending would have caused even more. Lying to Emma would have hurt her in ways she might never have recovered from. Marrying someone just because it was easier would have destroyed both of us. Eventually. Choosing comfort over truth wasn't kindness. It was cowardice. And yes, people were disappointed. Yes, I lost things. But I also gained something rare. A life where I get to be fully seen, not just loved, known. Some nights when I couldn't sleep, I'd glance at Noah beside me and wonder if he felt the same fear I did. That it could all fall apart. That I might still be running from something I didn't fully understand. Once I asked him. He didn't hesitate. "I'm not afraid you'll leave," he said. "I'm afraid you'll stop choosing this, that you'll start thinking you don't deserve it." That hit harder than anything else, because for a long time I didn't think I deserved happiness. Not the real kind, not the kind that cost something. But now I knew better. Deserving had nothing to do with it. Love wasn't earned. It was accepted. That became our quiet promise, to keep choosing each other, even on the days when it wasn't easy, especially then. And if someone asked me now, was it worth it? Was dismantling my whole life worth what I found? I'd say yes. Every single time. Because for the first time, I wasn't living someone else's story. I was living mine. Coming out to myself was hard. Coming out to the people I loved was harder. But nothing prepared me for what it meant to live that truth in the world. When Noah and I walked into restaurants together, I still felt it. That subtle shift in energy. A stare that lingered too long. A smile that disappeared too quickly. Most people didn't say anything, but silence had its own sharpness. One night, we were at a dinner party hosted by a coworker of mine. It was mostly couples. Safe crowd, educated, polite, until someone asked how we met. I started to explain, but before I got to the part where I was engaged to a woman when I met Noah, someone laughed. Loud, awkward. "Wait, so you just switched teams?" he asked. The room froze. Someone coughed. Someone else grabbed their wine. I tried to keep it light. I guess I finally realized what I needed. But it didn't land. Noah didn't speak the rest of the evening. And when we got home, he didn't need to say why. I already knew. "Are we always going to be the story in the room?" I asked. "Maybe," he said, "but that's their discomfort, not ours." Still, it stuck with me. I wanted to believe I didn't care what people thought anymore. But I did, especially when it was people I once believed respected me. A few weeks later, I ran into Emma at a bookstore. It wasn't planned. She looked surprised, but not hostile. We talked for a few minutes. Surface-level stuff. Then she asked, "Are you happy?" I paused longer than I should have. "Yes," I said. "You hesitated. Not because I'm unsure, just because it's complicated." She nodded. "Yeah, it always was." We didn't talk about the wedding, or the past, or what we lost, but something in her expression told me she understood now. That maybe in some quiet way, she'd also found freedom in letting go of a life that wasn't meant for her either. That night, I told Noah about the encounter. He listened without interruption. Then he asked, "Do you miss her?" "I miss who I thought I was with her, who I thought I had to be." He nodded slowly. "That makes sense. No jealousy?" "I'm not threatened by your past," he said. "It brought you here." I reached for his hand. "Thank you for not asking me to be anything but myself." You'd be surprised how rare that is. He was right. Even in a post-coming-out world, there were expectations. To be proud but not too loud. To be authentic but not make anyone uncomfortable. To prove that your life was just as valid, without ever seeming like you had something to prove. It was exhausting. And yet, in all that noise, Noah remained quiet, constant, steady, the person I could fall apart in front of without shame. One Sunday afternoon, we were walking through the city when a kid, maybe 16, stopped us. He looked nervous, eyes darting everywhere. "I saw your wedding video online," he said to Noah. You looked happy." Noah smiled. "We are." The kid hesitated, then added, "My parents would kill me if I ever did what you did." He wasn't looking for advice. He just needed to say it out loud. So I told him, "You don't owe anyone your truth until you're safe. But don't let fear decide who you are." He nodded, then disappeared into the crowd. Noah didn't say anything, but I saw the way he looked at me after, like he was seeing me not just as a partner, but as someone standing firmly in the man I'd fought so hard to become. That moment reminded me, being visible wasn't about being fearless. It was about being honest, even when it was hard. And it was still hard, but it was also real. And I'd take real over easy any day.